MIDI polyphonic expression, or MPE, is now in Ableton Live 11. MPE is a way of using MIDI to control multiple parameters of every note within compatible instruments. These can be both hardware and software. The benefit of using MPE instruments is how expressive they are. So how does it work? If we take the example of playing a chord, if using standard MIDI, each held note is transmitted from our MIDI keyboard to our instrument via a single MIDI channel. This works fine for the individual notes and their velocities, all of which can be recognized and recorded as separate data, which we can edit later on if needed. But if we were to use the pitch bend wheel, for example, on the keyboard, any movements from this will be applied to all the notes. The same goes for modulation and so on. MPE, on the other hand, allows each note to have its own dedicated MIDI channel. This now means that any pitch bend or pressure or aftertouch affects only that note. Each note could be independent from the rest and have a unique tone, shape, and evolution to it. There are some MPE-enabled instruments in Live 11, including Wavetable, Sampler. There's also support for third-party MPE-compatible VST plugins. If you plan on using an MPE controller, you'll need to enable MPE in the MIDI preferences. I'm currently using the Rolly C-board block as my MPE controller, so I'll click here to enable it. Let's take a look at some of Live 11's MPE instruments in action. A great way to get started and to get a feel for working with MPE is to try some of the new presets. These can be found in the Sounds category under MPE Sounds. Let's try this example out. If I slide up and down, we can hear quite significant changes in the sound, morphing between this low, breathy pad sound through to a rattling, granular stick sound. Applying more pressure to the note opens up the frequencies of the sound, making it brighter. And gliding from left to right applies pitch bend. The exciting part of this is that all of this works on a per note basis. So if I hold two notes down together, I can apply more pressure to one to make it brighter, leaving the other note, and I can slide the other note up to transform it. MPE will obviously benefit your own sound designs, whether you have an MPE controller or not, as we can draw in our own polyphonic expression data directly into a clip. More on that in a bit. Assigning MPE control data to parameters on an instrument is straightforward. Let's take a look at Wavetable. Here we can navigate to the modulation matrix. Notice there's a new section for MPE. Let's leave the pitch bend at its default setting. Let's apply the up and down slide movements to the wavetable position. Now, by pressing a note and sliding up and down, the wavetable position follows per note. Let's now add some frequency modulation to the sound. And assign the pressure to control the amount. Now, applying more pressure to a note increases the amount of frequency modulation being applied to that specific note. MPE control is an included Max Velar device in Live 11 and can be found in the MIDI effects category. MPE control essentially fine-tunes, shapes and transforms incoming MPE modulation. We can focus on a particular category of data to work on, such as pitch, pressure or slide. A really useful feature of the MPE control device is the smoothing. This allows us to smooth out modulation data. This could be set to large values, for example, to create longer transition times between movements on your controller. Or just subtle smoothing to avoid any jittery modulation jumps. The device can also convert MPE data into regular MIDI. This means that the polyphonic MPE data coming from your controller can be used to control a non-MPE instrument. So we could use the sliding up and down on the Rolly C-board block, for example, in the same way that we would a modulation wheel on a regular MIDI keyboard. This would all happen monophonically on the instrument, of course. The MPE control also offers useful visual feedback on the notes and expression being generated. Ableton Live 11 introduces a simple but extremely powerful MPE editor, which can be found in the New Expression tab in a MIDI clip. It's possible here to edit 5 expression dimensions for each individual note: pitch, pressure, slide, velocity, and release velocity. Here you'll see the notes you've recorded, and if we zoom in a little, we can see the per note pitch bend. We can of course edit this by clicking on the breakpoints and dragging them to the desired position. Notice that it indicated numerical values in semitones, so we know how much pitch bend is being applied. We can snap this to semitones also by holding the Command key on a Mac. This is a really intuitive way of working with per note pitch bend, as we can easily bend a note up or down to another note from the visual piano roll grid. Further down, and we can reveal the additional polyphonic expression lanes: pressure, slide, velocity, and release velocity. Selecting a note makes its expression available for editing. Editing recorded data and creating new control data works in a similar way to automation in Live, in that we can click and drag breakpoints to alter the shape of modulation. We can also drag across to replace multiple breakpoints. And holding the Alt key, we can apply curves. Using the Draw tool, it's easy to sketch in new expression shapes, which are again applied on a per note basis. In this example, you can see that I have alternating pressure and slide patterns, allowing each note to morph in and out of each other. MPE integration with Max for Live offers some exciting possibilities also. A set of MPE objects are available in Max, so making custom devices that integrate with an MPE controller is now possible. MPE adds a deeper level of precision to sound design and sound editing. Whether playing or recording via a dedicated MPE controller, or drawing expression shapes directly into a MIDI clip, the scope for what is possible from a single instrument is now much wider.